Welcome back to Question Period. Before the break, we brought you part one of our conversation with Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre. Here's part two. I do want to talk about inflation because we've got new numbers out from Statistics Canada this week, in particular about grocery prices, and you flagged some of it right there. Another 4.7% higher in this November than it was last November. You have consistently laid the blame for that at the Prime Minister's feet. You've also more specifically blamed high government spending, big government deficits, which this deficit objectively is very high. If that were the case, though, wouldn't core inflation also be increasing at the same rate as those grocery prices?
It is increasing. It's been between 2.8 and 3% ever since Mr. Carney became Prime Minister, which is not, the target is 2. When it's at 3, that's not 1% higher, that's 50% higher. And people feel that in higher costs for food is the worst offender right now, of course, 4.7 or 4.8%. But not only food, other basic essentials are going up. Rent has been going up. The cost of fuel, if you take out the temporary effect of the carbon tax, has been going up. So Canadians can't afford this government. And it's very simple. When you're creating cash faster than you're creating the stuff cash buys, you have inflation. And that is one of the reasons why prices continue to rise. And for many people, rise faster than their incomes. It's why we have a record number of people lined up at food banks. It's why we meet people every single day who tell me they simply cannot afford to put food on the table anymore. People with jobs who work 50, 60 hours a week are going to food banks for the first time in their lives because of the higher cost that this Liberal government is imposing, yes, through its deficits, but also through its hidden grocery taxes.
I want to unpack some of that because I understand exactly what you mean about people. They approach us, they talk about this as well. We represent it on our newscast and we talk about it frequently. And it is not to take away from that I ask you questions about the policies you say would ameliorate that situation for them. But when I pose to you the difference between food inflation, for example, and regular inflation, the core inflation number in November is down 2.8%. As you said, it was originally 3%.
Which is what's the target? The
target is between 2 and 3%. It is within the target range right now, inflation. I'm just saying the difference between food and like if it were all government spending, wouldn't it all be out of control? And it's not. There are other factors at play, including those detailed by Statistics Canada in their report released this week. Things like weather conditions, cattle supply, things like that.
So first of all, the target is not between 2 and 3%. The target is 2%. The range is 1 to 3. And we're at the top of the range and on the verge of going over it. For food prices, it's 4.8. And Canadians will be forced to spend an extra $1,000 next year on groceries for a total of $17,600, an almost unbelievable amount of money, an amount that is doubled under the Liberal government. It is true that that inflation is too high across the board. Food is worse. Now, why is inflation high across the board? Because the government is running a $78 billion deficit. They're creating more cash. That bids up the price of goods. Why is food worse? Because on top of the monetary inflation of printing money, you've got a bunch of extra hidden taxes. You've got the industrial carbon tax, which applies on farm equipment, fertilizer, for food processors. You've got the food packaging tax. They're banning single-use plastic. Sounds like a nice idea until you learn that it makes food go bad 4 days faster, and all that food waste goes on your grocery bill. Then you've got the fuel standard tax, which is going to hit 7 cents a liter next year. That hits farmers. There's no farm exemption on that, by the way. Even the horrible carbon tax, at least they had a colored fuel exemption for farm equipment. This is going to be a tax directly on tractors and combines and on the truckers that bring us food. And then, of course, you've got the deficit. So all of these things these are all Liberal policies that drive up the cost of food and everything else, and that's why we need to cut the taxes, but also cut the wasteful spending to bring down that crazy deficit.
But two of those things that you flagged, for example, the packaging stuff that's about to come, the clean fuel regulations, all of those are things that are to come into effect in the future at the level that you have described and that all your press releases talk about. That's not actually what's happening right now. So are you not misrepresenting, again, the truth, the full picture? Like you want Canadians to believe everything is the government's fault. Some of it is, but not all of it.
So those things are in place right now. The industrial carbon tax is in place right now.
But your own language said is going to be. Like the industrial carbon tax, yes, but the food packaging and the clean fuel regulations.
The packaging tax is already in place. The fuel standard is in place as well. I said next year it's rising even more to 7 cents a liter. I think it's 3 or 4 right now. So these policies are in place already. You're right to say they're going to get worse the longer the Liberals are in power, because they have an accelerator on all of those taxes, but they are in place right now and they have real costs today.
But is it fair to say that it's just that stuff? Like, why isn't Statistics Canada, who used to, for example, isolate the carbon tax and driving up the price of gasoline, and be honest with Canadians about that? Why are they not saying, here are all the things that the government is doing that is wrong, that is leading to these excessive prices? Instead, they're very specific in highlighting higher beef prices have been driven in part by lower cattle inventories in North America. Coffee prices have been impacted by adverse weather conditions in growing regions. Like, there are other reasons, and you don't want to concede that at all.
Well, if there were just a bunch of sporadic reasons that are scattered across the world, then you would presume there would be other things that would favor price reductions and cancel them out. But it's not just coffee and beef and lettuce. It's groceries across the board are more expensive. It doesn't matter if you're buying a loaf of bread or a bag of peanuts, you're paying more for everything, vastly more. And let's be clear, the cost of groceries for a family of 4 has roughly doubled under this Liberal government. That's not because there was a 1-year drought for coffee bean growers in Brazil this year. This has been a consistent trend since the Liberal government took office, and in particular in the last 5 years, while Carney was Trudeau's economic advisor, while they started printing money and accelerating their tax increases on fuel and energy, that is when we have started to see the worst inflation, just as I predicted we would, and it will get worse as long as they keep taxing and spending money that Canadians can't afford.
So let me maybe get you on the record then, Mr. Poilievre. If you, as promised, remove all of these, just as you said you would remove the consumer carbon price, will groceries become cheap?
Food should be really cheap in Canada, because we have the most farmland anywhere, I think the 5th most farmland anywhere in the world. This is what's so frustrating. Everything should be dirt cheap in Canada because we have the most dirt. We have the most dirt to grow food on, the most dirt to build houses on, the most dirt to produce energy from, we have the 3rd biggest supply of oil. It should be cheap to buy these things in Canada. We should be the most affordable country in the world, yet why are we one of the most expensive? Government, taxes on home building, taxes on energy, government money printing, blocking us from producing our resources, which artificially suppresses the Canadian dollar. And when you have a weak dollar, you have less buying power. The cost of living crisis is entirely government made, and that is what is so frustrating about it.
Respectfully, though, my question was, if you remove, as you allege, all of these policies that are the sole contributor to inflation, which I counter, I don't know if that's the whole picture, but let's say what you say is true, and they all are. And you're Prime Minister, and you do all that, will Canadians have cheap food prices?
Savings.
Because when the carbon price was removed, they did not.
Because they brought in
They
two
didn't
or
bring
three
it in,
other
they already
carbon
had
taxes,
it.
right?
We litigated this before.
Yes, but they're increasing, and you can't, so the Liberals take one hand out of your right pocket and put 2 or 3 hands in your left pocket, and they ask you to thank them for it. I said I would axe all of the carbon taxes, and I would cut other taxes as well, and that's how we're going to make life affordable. And I wouldn't be running a $78 billion money printing deficit right now. I would be bringing the deficit down. So it is the cost of government is driving up the cost of living. That's why Canadians cannot afford to live. And it's precisely why Conservatives are calling for an affordable government so that Canadians can have an affordable life.
I've gone over my allotted time. I apologize. One final question, if you'll permit me, on the palace intrigue. If you do ultimately lose another MP and the Liberals form a majority, will you stay on as leader?
That'll be up to the members of our party, because our party is not run by backroom deals in Ottawa, but by the welders and waitresses, soldiers and police officers, small business people who actually join the party and come to our convention. I am fighting for them. I'm fighting for them every day and in every way, and they will decide in the convention if they want me to stay on.
But you'll be at that convention no matter what?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Poilievre.
I'll see you there.
Appreciate it as always. You bet. We'll be there.
All right.
Thank you, sir. Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Merry Christmas to you.
That was Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre. Prime Minister Mark Carney was not made available to CTV News for an end-of-year interview. We're going to take a quick break on today's question period, but when we come back, roles reversed. This time last year, Justin Trudeau's leadership was on the line. Is it Poilievre's turn? The Sunday strategy session with Kathleen Montgomery tonight and Scott Reed will tackle that next.